You know, nothing says love like a candidate forum. I'm Angela Paxton. I'm running for the Texas Senate. I've lived in McKinney and Collin County for over 20 years. I love this county. You know, we moved here to help raise our family and to help start a church. And it's been one of the best decisions that we've ever made. My background is in education, over 22 years, in public school and private school and also homeschooling. And I am very much looking forward to serving you in the Texas Senate. Bringing my relationships of 20 years, bringing my experience in education, which is unique in the Texas Senate. There's literally no one in the Texas Senate that has my background in education, although we spend over 52% of our general revenues on education. You know, I know that as your Texas Senator, I'm not your CEO. I work for you. Your priorities are my priorities, and I look forward to serving you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mark. Well, I'm Phillip Huffines, and first let me tell you that I am not a politician. I'm a business guy. I'm a strong constitutional conservative. I believe in life, and I'm proud to announce that just this last week, Texas Right to Life has endorsed my campaign. And I want to remind you that your freedom comes from God and not from government, and government's job is to protect your liberties, life, and your freedom. Well, my roots run really deep here in the district and in Collin County. For over 90 years, we've been right here selling cars. I'm sure many of you know that. And my very first business I ever opened was in the 1970s, a long time ago. And it was on a little 2-lane asphalt road. And that little asphalt road is now known as State Highway 121. So I've spent my entire life right here in the district in building and developing for the last 35 years commercial real estate. Now let me tell you why I'm running. It's really important to me to make sure that your children and your grandchildren have more opportunities than we have today. Collin County is one of the leading job generators in the entire United States. And it's important that your next state senator be a businessman. You see, I've signed thousands of paychecks and created hundreds of jobs and started a lot of businesses. I know what it's like to live with the rules and regulation that the state continues to impose. I've got decades of experience in the leadership skills that are necessary to go to Austin and create results. And most importantly, I have the courage to implement the change that is required to generate those results. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Huffines, we'll let you go first with this question, and I'll try and alternate back and forth on who goes first. If I mess up, forgive me. Throw something at me and we'll correct it. Okay. So the first question for Mr. Huffines and for Ms. Paxton is, what distinguishes you from your opponent? And please be specific.
Well, let me tell you that, once again, I just said it earlier. I'm a business person with decades of experience in the leadership skills that are necessary to go to Austin and create results. I'm passionate about public schools and public education. I'm a strong advocate of public schools. I've been tutoring in public schools for 25 years with junior achievement, and that's to teach financial literacy for 11th and 12th graders. I know how hard it is to be a teacher. I know how much passion that requires. I teach 3 classes in the morning, and I am exhausted by noon, and I'm looking to go take a nap. So I'm here to make sure that we take care of our teachers in the state. We owe them an obligation, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. And I can tell you this, that it's really important to make sure that Collin County remains the beacon of liberty and freedom that it is today.
Thank you, Ms. Paxton.
Well, I think the most obvious thing is probably that I've lived in the district for such a long time, over 20 years. As I said, we moved here for no other reason than just to raise our family, and we've just become part of this community. It's been such a blessing to us, and you know, as we've served in the political trenches with many of you in this room, we've been able to build relationships that now are something that I'm going to be able to leverage. I have relationships in this district. Some people may call them insiders, I don't know. But people like Jeff Leach and Matt Shaheen, Freedom Caucus people, Scott Sanford. All of our county commissioners endorsed me when I stepped into the race. all of our constables, and hundreds of people in the grassroots that have known me and Ken and have worked together with us to make Collin County into the really conservative bastion that it is today. The other thing I think is my background in education. It's unique. You know, I just saw a mailer about myself with a photoshopped head. That seems to be happening more and more. And on that, I'm holding a resume, and it says I have no experience. But I believe education is important experience. And I guess the third thing would be that I have never given a donation to a Liberal Democrat.
Okay, thank you. And I will start holding up this folder about 15 or 20 seconds before your time is up to give you a little bit of a heads up to wrap up. Okay, Ms. Paxton, we'll let you go first on this one.
All right.
Would you please share your view of property rights and the use of eminent domain?
Property rights are one of the cornerstones of a free market and free society. And, you know, when we have situations like we had in McKinney with eminent domain, I have worked behind the scenes to help our citizens who live in the ETJ have a voice. There was a land grab. We all watched it, and I was proud to be part of connecting people so that we could get that stopped. You know, people have a right to their own property, and it, again, is a cornerstone of a free society, and we have to protect it at all costs.
Thank you, Mr. Huffines. And by the way, feel free to ask me to repeat the question. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, property rights is a fundamental principle of a free society. And I can tell you that there's nothing more important than making sure that we own our property, that the government doesn't have a right to take it except what is constitutional. And as the Fifth Amendment states, it has to be for a governmental purpose. So I'm for protecting property rights and making sure that it's not for a private purpose or a business purpose, but only for necessities such as new roads and for the government's purposes. So I'm a strong believer in making sure that we protect each individual, that we have a court system that enforces the Constitution and enforces the laws to protect our property rights.
Okay, Mr. Huffines, this next one, you can go first. Please describe the key components of Senate Bill 2 as passed by the Senate in the 85th legislature, and share what property tax reforms you will advocate for if elected.
Okay, Senate Bill 2. Well, property tax reform is extremely important. You know, in my campaign, we have knocked on over 90,000 doors, and we're talking to voters right there on their front porch. And this is one of the most important issues that the voters are telling me. We've got to do something about the ever-increasing property taxes. As we all know in this room, property taxes go up every single year. It's not because the tax rate goes up, but it's because your assessed valuations are increasing. You know, property taxes run between 2.25% and 2.75% of the assessed valuation the government says your property is worth. So we pay rent to the government every single year, around 2.5%. We've got to do something about that. We need to put a cap on it. And the reason your property taxes go up every year not only is assessed valuation, it's because governments, local governments, have not learned to live with the revenue that they have been receiving. Right? It's never a revenue issue for government. It's always an expenditure issue. They're always wanting to spend too much money. Do you know why that is? I call it the OPM syndrome, other people's money. As long as it's other people's money, they're going to spend it. Have you ever seen an agency or a bureaucrat that goes to the budget board and the legislature and says, I don't need any more money. Hey, my agency needs to go away? Never, because it's other people's money. So I want to make sure that governments live within their means and that they're efficient and effective, and my business skills will put that to the test, and I will make sure that government lives within its means.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Huffines, you get to go first on this.
I really want to talk about SB2.
Yeah, we should let Angela talk about this.
Well, the question I believe was, what were the components of SB2? Okay. So, you know, the current law is that at 8%, at an 8% increase, that triggers the rollback. At that point, a rollback election can be petitioned for. That's the current law. So what SB2 did was it actually changed what the rollback rate was. And I believe it was 4% in the Senate. And it included an automatic rollback. So I support that. Of course, it all fell apart, mainly because of House leadership. I am so excited that we will have a different speaker next year. I think we all are. And so, but I support the provisions of that. We've got to get a handle on the property taxes. It is unsustainable. I am looking forward to working with the Lieutenant Governor, with our House delegation, to have successful property tax reform next session.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Paxton. I'll interrupt Mr. Huffines. Share the provisions of Senate Bill 6 from the 85th legislature and your position on this legislation.
So SB 6, the bathroom bill, as they called it, the privacy bill. As an educator, I found this to be very, very important. I can tell you in a school, the first thing that we're always thinking about is safety. And I don't know any person, parent or teacher, who thinks it's a good idea to put boys and girls in the same dressing rooms, showers. What could go wrong, right? I mean, it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, and I've heard a lot of dumb things. So, one of the things I noticed, though, about this bill was kind of the marketing from the left. Because really what this bill did, it addressed restrooms and private, intimate areas in government and school buildings only. Now, in the newspaper or everywhere else, you heard that it was about businesses. It didn't do anything like that. But I would support that. It is about safety, and we don't get a safer place when we put kids in dumb positions like that. So.
Mr. Huffines.
Yes, thanks, Mark. Well, it is called the Privacy Act, and I think it's been labeled by the bathroom bill, by the leftists, and a lot of the agendas that we don't support here in this room. And I'm 100% in support of the Lieutenant Governor's bill. We do not need teenage boys in the locker rooms of our 13-year-old daughters. We need to make sure that we protect our children in our school systems and in government buildings. And the bill only affected government buildings and schools. We need a uniform rule and a uniform law so that all the states, so we don't have hodgepodge, this school district with this rule. And this was set up and created because of the Obama administration when they sent in a letter out, not an executive order, but a regulation or a rule talking into a Fort Worth school district in Texas saying that the school district had to accommodate gender identity, not natural gender. And and on overnight field trips. Well, how ridiculous is that? We have to protect our teenage daughters. We need a uniform rule and a uniform law all across the state to make sure that we protect our daughters and that we push back against this agenda that is rampant in the state right now. And the business community got this all wrong. And I'm really surprised that they continue to drive this message that really isn't a message at all. It's just about protecting our children.
Thank you. How would you propose to reform public education financing in Texas? And how would this improve the current Robin Hood system?
Well, we all know that public education and the way we fund it in the state of Texas is broken. It's been broken for 25 years, ever since the early 1990s when the Supreme Court made that ruling about equal funding throughout the state. And let me tell you why it stays broken. It stays broken because many of our elected officials do not have the courage to implement the change that is necessary. Every 2 years in the legislature, they go down and kick the can down the road. They don't really address the issue. And now there are more and more school districts that are in the, quote, Robin Hood, the property wealth district. Plano, as you know, sent $155 million or so to the state of Texas. I will work tirelessly to make sure that your tax money here in Collin County remains in our school districts right here in Collin County. And the lieutenant and the governor in the special session set up a committee of 3 senators and 3 House members in the special session to address this very significant issue. Let's hope they have the courage to come up with zero-based budgeting and look at how we fund schools from the very beginning. Because if we can solve the problem on school funding, we can solve the problem on higher property taxes. Because as you know, school property taxes make up a large percentage of the total property tax that we pay. And I have the courage and the leadership skills to go to Austin and solve this problem. I am committed, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Thank you.
How?
Paxton?
Thanks, Sue. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, I am very, very excited to see what the Lieutenant Governor's Commission does recommend. I mean, I think we've got great people, smart people that are working on that, and I am looking forward to that. I do expect that a large part of what they will recommend will have to do with transparency, and I expect that a large part of what they recommend will have to do with making sure that dollars get to the classroom teacher. We know education is about students learning. Thank you. Education is about students learning so they can be good citizens, so they can be educated citizens. And so the dollar getting to the classroom teacher is essential. I think the other part that we have to think about is recapture. Of course, in Senate District 8, we have Chapter 41 and Chapter 42 schools. One of the problems with Robin Hood is that it is not transparent. The property wealthy districts put money back, send money back to the state, and unknown to most of us, that doesn't all go to the property poor schools. Some of that goes back into the general budget. And so one of the things that that does is it incentivizes the state right now to have schools in recapture. That's not transparent, and it has to end.
Thank you, Ms. Huffines. And
Did you say Ms. Huffines?
Mrs.
It's like we murdered your
Sorry.
Pick one. Holly, you want to answer a question?
Holly's got it.
Mrs. Paxton. Forgive me. What is your view of term limits in general, and would you support term limits for members of the Texas legislature to no more than 3 terms?
So term limits in general, I believe we have built in to the way we do business in Texas, and that is they're called elections. I would much rather, in my opinion, have the voters decide how long people serve in office. For example, if we have term limits under that particular situation, then what we're looking at is this is Ted Cruz's last term as senator. Good Republicans differ on this. It's actually part of our party platform. The party platform is something that's voted on from the precinct level on up to the state convention. And this is something that does come up every year. There are good Republicans that are very involved in that process that vote for it, against it, and various other things as well. But I would say I believe that it is elections, and I prefer to leave that to voters to decide so that we can have people like Ted Cruz as long as we want.
Okay, Mr. Huffines, or whatever your name is.
Well, I believe in the necessity, as I said at the very beginning, of term limits. And I say the necessity, not that I just believe in term limits. Because I know this for a fact, as everybody in the room does, that power corrupts. We need a mechanism, just as we put on the president in the early 1950s with a constitutional amendment where we limit the president to 2 terms, we need to limit politicians to a certain amount of terms. And the reason for that is I want government to be in the control of people. Not government controlling people, I want people controlling government. And that's the best way to do it. Because that disease of power, so to speak, the only way to cure it is to unplug them, right, and let them run for another office. Look, this is a fundamental principle in the Texas Republican Party platform. It was voted on by the party several years ago in a proposition in the primary, and 85% of Republicans support this. The grassroots support term limits. We need term limits on every single elected official, from the dog catcher all the way to the governor, so that we, the citizens, get control of government.
Thank you, and I want to thank both of you for staying in the time limit. This is great, we don't have to yell and scream. I'm messing up enough without that. So. Mr. Huffines. Do you believe negative campaigning is effective? And do you believe you or your campaign has engaged in negative campaigning during this election cycle?
Well, I started this campaign telling you I was only going to speak the truth. My campaign is all about the truth and the facts and what's important to the voters here in the district. And as I was telling you, I have talked to tens of thousands of voters, not me personally, but the campaign, and I know what's important to the voters here in the district. And they're telling me the issues that are important to them is securing the border, making sure we can keep Texans safe. They're also saying, hey, Huffines, go to Austin and lower property taxes. And while you're down there, do something about school finance, because it's totally broken, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. And they're saying, make sure you keep Collin County prosperous. We want to make sure that our children, as I said earlier, and our grandchildren have the same opportunities that we have. And that's exactly what my campaign's been focused on. The truth, the facts, and representing the voters here in the district, because I've been listening to you.
Thank you.
I was wondering if you could repeat the question, because based on my opponent's answer, I don't know what it was.
Do you believe in negative campaigning is effective? And do you believe you or your campaign has engaged in negative campaigning during this election cycle?
You know, I believe that personal attacks are out of bounds. And, you know, one of the things that has happened from the beginning, in fact, it's one of the things that sort of solidified my decision to run at all, was that before I even announced, my opponent was running calls attacking my husband on his legal issues, which are false accusations to start with. So that to me told me that there's a certain direction that I hope for our representation in this district. And it is not the sort that attacks the spouse of the person who's running. So as we have engaged in this campaign, we've been fighting that. And now we're at a time when we're addressing it. And so as we have brought truth to the forefront, that my opponent has given thousands of dollars to liberal Democrats that support issues that we as Republicans don't stand for. Issues like abortion, border security, property tax reform, against it. Then we have been speaking out and saying that out loud. I've never seen my head photoshopped on so many mailers. I appreciate it the most when the head and the body are proportionate. I'll just say. Thank you. That's all I'm
saying. You're up again, Ms. Paxton. In 10 words or less, describe your political philosophy. You're welcome to use single-word descriptions like party affiliation, adjective describing your view for a brief sentence of what you see as government's role. So what's your political philosophy?
Don't count. I don't know if we can do anything in 10 words or less. I'm a pro-life, constitutional, principled, conservative Republican, constituent-based, guided by faith, representative government, citizen legislature.
Thank you. I think that was more than 10.
Well, I told you not to count.
Mr. Huffines.
Yes, I'm a conservative Republican, pro-life, and a Trump supporter.
All right, thank you. All right, this is the last general question, and it'll start with Mr. Huffines. Would you share any notable clubs, organizations, or associations that have endorsed your campaign?
Well, as we all know, the only endorsement that matters are you here in this room, the voters in the district. And I'm proud to announce that I was endorsed by Right to Life just a few days ago. And today, I was endorsed by the 3 most conservative House members in the state House of Representatives. You know, it just shows how conservative I am when we have Matt Rinaldi, Jonathan Stickland, and Briscoe Kane endorsing my campaign. And also, I've been endorsed by, so that you know, from the grassroots, because the grassroots is standing tall for my campaign. I've been endorsed by more than twice as many precinct chairmen as my opponent. Also, the officers of the county party this year have endorsed my campaign. And they're endorsing my campaign because they know that I'm the most conservative candidate, that I can go to Austin and create results. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. And I can tell you this, unfortunately, I think I'm a little too conservative for the Dallas Morning News.
Ms. Paxton?
Is it true that officers of the county party endorse my opponent?
Well, I am one of the past officers, and I have not made an endorsement. I won't speak for the other officers. I believe they're trying to stay neutral, but I'm not going to stand here and question it.
No?
Not an officer.
That was my
I
understanding.
think individually, some people may have
I am endorsed.
be supporting, but
You have not
I
endorsed?
am endorsed.
So the endorsements in my campaign, I've been so honored. You know, when we rolled out after about 2 weeks of calling people and asking if they would support my campaign if I were to run, I was honored, as I've said, to have almost 1,100 people with us in just 2 weeks' time. We have mayors, city council people, school board people across the district. I have the Attorney General of Texas. And honestly, I would never have considered running if I didn't have the full support of my husband. I know it is difficult on a spouse, and I know he would never have run if I hadn't been 100% with him. And I've always appreciated that about him. Collin County Conservative Republicans, Grassroots McKinney, Collin County Deputies Association, Texas Values Action, Lone Star Liberty, Texas Homeschool Coalition, Concerned Women for America, our entire Collin County House delegation, which I think speaks, again, these are Freedom Caucus guys. And I think it speaks to our readiness to work together to make Senate District 8 the best district in the entire state of Texas.
thank you. Okay, we're now going to the lightning round. And I know it's difficult for a politician, being a recovering politician, to answer anything with a one-word answer. But these should be fairly simple. We're asking you to answer with yes, no, or if you want to just pass, that's fine. We'll start with you, Mrs. Paxton. Have you ever been convicted of a felony?
I have not.
3 words.
Did you say one? No.
I'm just making fun, sorry.
No,
Mr. Huffines.
no.
Mr. Huffines, do you support constitutional carry in Texas?
Yes,
Mrs. Paxton.
Absolutely.
Mrs. Huffines, will you support term limits?
Mrs. Huffines? Do you want
Holly,
me
what do you
to?
think?
I don't know. What's the question?
Could you repeat the question? I was looking at Holly.
I don't think I heard a question.
How about I go to Angela and Phillip? How about
Sure,
that?
that's fine.
Angela,
That's good.
do you support term limits if it comes to a vote in the Texas Senate?
No.
Yes,
Phillip, do you support the Texas Republican Party platform in its entirety?
yes,
Angela?
No.
Okay.
I don't support term limits, and I also don't support legislature election of senators.
Angela, would you support legislation that would cap future state budget increases to population plus inflation growth?
Yes.
yes,
Phillip, would you oppose any state budget that increases more than population plus inflation?
yes,
No.
Okay. Angela?
Did you say opposed, right? Would I
Yes,
oppose the budget?
yes, opposed.
Yes.
I had to do a double take as well.
Wait, now I have to do a double take because I heard it wrong too.
Would you oppose a state budget that increases more than population and inflation?
But I oppose, I am, gosh, that's so
It's a double
confusing.
negative. Yeah.
I think a lawyer wrote this question.
I think so. I am opposed to increasing beyond that.
And that was your answer as well?
So yes.
Oh, right.
Someone tell me if I'm lying to myself.
We
Yes.
understand that. Okay.
I'm a fiscal conservative.
All right.
I promise.
Angela, would you support legalization or decriminalization of illicit drugs, including marijuana?
Would I support?
Would you support that?
Just double checking now. I would not.
Philip?
No.
Philip, have you voted for a Democrat in the last 20 years?
No.
Angela?
Nope.
Angela, have you ever donated money to a Democrat candidate or office holder?
Never.
Philip?
It's not that simple. I'm one of the largest donors to conservative Republicans and conservative colleges in the state of Texas.
Yes or no? Another person was allowed to answer this
Right, she can talk as
on
much as she
Monday.
wants.
Okay.
Keep it fair.
Philip, would you identify yourself as a Republican, a conservative, a Democrat, a liberal, libertarian, or something else?
I'm a conservative, pro-life Republican.
Okay.
Me too.
All right. Now, if you want to answer that last question, both candidates have a minute and a half for closing. I think Angela started out with opening, so we'll let Philip start out with his closing.
But when I started this campaign, which is nearly a year ago, I promised you that I would speak the truth, and I have. And so I ask you to join me, and let's join me, and let's push back on the Austin elite, the insiders who are trying to manipulate this race and tell you who to vote for. You know, I have been in this race for nearly a year, working really hard, listening to voters to find out what's important to them. And I feel so strongly about that I will not take any compensation or pay from the state of Texas, because I work for you, the voters. And I can tell you this, that I am passionate about liberty and freedom and representing your interest in Austin. And I promise this, that if I'm elected, you can count on me to generate results and to find the creative solutions to the big issues facing the state of Texas in this district. Because I am passionate about making certain that Collin County remains the beacon of liberty and freedom that it is.
Thank you.
Well, this is my home. It has been for over 20 years. I'm invested in Collin County. I raised my children here. 2 decades of relationships. I've worked here. It's a place I love. It's home. And that's why I quit my job, even though I've got 2 kids in college, to run, because I believe that voters deserve a choice. We deserve a committed, consistent conservative. Someone that we know loves this district first and personal interest second. Someone that will go to the mat for us, because this is our home. I love this district. I will listen. I belong to you. And I want to serve you in the Texas Senate with all my heart, with all my mind, and with all my strength. We're the 6th largest county by population. We deserve a voice in Collin County in the Senate. And I'm asking for your support and your vote in the primary. Thank you.